Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is Mark from Sound Matters. Having lived very quietly now with the MM Pro Phono Preamp for just under a year, has this become my new reference phono stage for moving magnet cartridges? Let's find out in today's review. Michael Fidler's classic audio company and his range of boutique all through whole circuitry phono preamps have gained a strong reputation in just a few short years, thanks to his engineer-led approach, his attention to detail, and frankly his honesty in terms of listing specifications on his website in terms of the performance of his products. For a fledgling cottage industry style business, this is impressive in a short space of time. Following my positive experiences reviewing the Spartan 15 moving magnet phono cartridge and the MC Pro moving coil phono cartridge, Michael followed up and asked me if I'd be interested in trying the moving magnet version of the MC Pro, obviously called the MM Pro. I gratefully agreed, but since then Michael has faced unprecedented demand for his phono preamps and been reviewing his production facilities in the process. So that kind of put this review on the back burner for almost a year. So I've quietly sat in the background using this phono preamp day in, day out, whilst also reviewing several other phono preamps in the process. And every single time I did, I always just found myself inevitably returning after the review, as good as those products were, back to the MM Pro. So what makes the MM Pro stand out? Aside from its vanishing distortion, impressive adherence to the RIAA equalization curve, and very low self-noise, it also has additional connectivity options and some highly useful features. So let's take a look at the unit and the features in a little more detail. The housing is essentially the same as the MC Pro, so the units look almost identical. There are a few obvious changes to the label of the gain setting, for example, and the product name, of course, on that CNC machined aluminium front panel. Otherwise, though, on first glance, it's a very short game of spot the difference. While the MM Pro isn't the most beautiful or fancy looking phono stage on the market, it does feel exceptionally well built. The front panel is a sturdy 6mm thick, with robust toggle switches in place of the usual flimsy push buttons that you get on much of the competition. For those interested, those toggle switches are rated for 50,000 cycles instead of the usual 10,000 cycles of much cheaper push switches. There are 4 switches in question. The first is an on and off switch, the second is to enable or bypass a low frequency crossfeed feature and its accompanying turnover dial. The third and fourth switches control the optional mono mode and adjustable gain settings. You'll notice 2 gain settings. There are 42 and 52 dB modes, which comfortably covers most moving magnet and high output moving coil cartridges. If you play a lot of older records like I do, perhaps in varying states of condition, then the mono switch and the low frequency crossfeed feature alone are going to be invaluable with this phono preamp as part of your vinyl rig. As soon as you have these, you're just not going to want to be without them. Flip the MM Pro around and you'll find the same connectivity options as the MC Pro with the usual RCA outputs and balanced XLR outputs. The option of balanced outputs gives greater flexibility for equipment placement. You'll be able to run the outputs over much longer distances without having to worry about picking up noise. So let's just say that you've got a preamp or an integrated amplifier with balanced inputs. You could have this phono preamp nice and close to the turntable, keeping that RCA cable nice and short, whilst running the output cable a much longer distance without worrying about picking up interference. Now let's move on to some of those really practical, handy features of the MM Pro, starting with the mono switch. I think it's very surprising how infrequently we see mono switches on modern phono preamps, particularly when we consider their practical benefits, particularly when playing older, more well-loved mono pressings. When playing these mono records with a stereo cartridge, unwanted surface noise is often exaggerated because, of course, stereo cartridges detect vertical groove movement. A mono switch neatly eliminates much of this vertical noise by combining the stereo signals into a single cleaner mono output, mimicking the tracking behaviour of a dedicated mono cartridge. Arguably, a true mono cartridge is the ideal way to achieve this, but a mono switch can get you most of the way there without shelling out for all that specific mono gear. If you've never heard one of these in action, you'll be really shocked at just how much of a difference it makes. I've put an A/B comparison at my Patreon page down in the description of this video. It's a vintage mono Beatles record where you can hear before the mono switch is enabled, and with the mono switch enabled, you really will be surprised by just how much difference this makes. The second feature is that low frequency crossfeed, which is much more subtle, but it can be handy in certain circumstances. In layman's terms, a low frequency crossfeed essentially enables us to mono the bass below a set threshold in terms of frequency. So this monos the bass without affecting the stereo width across the board. It's often the case that much of vinyl's surface noise exists in the lower frequencies due to the RIAA equalization curve process, where the bass frequencies are boosted. For most mixes, particularly on vinyl, very low frequencies are mono in the mix anyway, so we stand to lose very little by summing the frequencies to mono, and it may help to reduce so-called vinyl raw surface noise. Listen to the audio samples I will play you in a second and you will hear how the low frequency raw is reduced. I have used a run-out groove to exaggerate this for demonstration purposes, but you can imagine how this feature may help to reduce the noise floor and produce deeper, inky black backgrounds. Another use case for this feature that I found is in playing those kind of extreme 60s, early 60s stereo mixes on headphones. Now this can be pretty disorientating and sometimes some people find it difficult to listen to. So with the crossfeed feature, you can mono the bass a little bit without affecting the stereo mix overall. And in my ears, this just makes listening on headphones sound a bit more balanced and less disorientating. It's a more enjoyable listen when this feature is enabled, at least in my personal humble opinion. Features aside, the performance of the MM Pro is impeccably quiet in terms of self-noise, with also vanishingly low distortion and a very neutral tone thanks to its strong adherence to the RIAA equalization curve. According to the specifications, the MM Pro achieves an RIAA accuracy of give or take 0.1 dB with no coloration from 20 Hz to 40 kHz. While I couldn't find anyone who'd measured this specific preamp independently in terms of the specifications, there is an Audio Science Reviews measurement of the MC Pro which demonstrates just how flat and accurate Michael's preamps are. I trust him on his claims here, and actually interestingly Michael actually has a whole video on his YouTube channel about how some manufacturers might play games with noise measurements in terms of phono preamps. I'll link it in the description of the video because it actually makes really interesting watching. Speaking of noise and unwanted distortions, the MM Pro is an exceptionally quiet phono stage, and part of how it achieves this is apparently by using active loading, as opposed to the standard 47k ohm load of other phono stages. Low distortion is achieved, according to Michael, by, and I'll quote here, careful gain distribution in an original triple stage topology. There's a lot of technical information to dig through on Michael Fidler's website, which I think is admirable. He gives more detail than most other manufacturers. There's certainly no marketing fluff here, and it's certainly not a designer website, but there's more information than you get from any other manufacturer. So if you like technical specs and you really want to dig into it, I recommend you check out his website. Again, there'll be a link to the product description in the link of this video. Right then, it's bottom line time. What do I make of the MM Pro? The MM Pro delivers a remarkably clean, transparent and lifelike sonic presentation. It's exceptionally quiet, providing deep and inky black backgrounds that allows the fine musical details to emerge effortlessly. The bass response is tight and articulate, never feeling bloated or artificially boosted, which gives rhythm sections both depth and agility. Mid-range frequencies feel rich and natural, bringing vocals and acoustic instruments forward with warmth and authenticity. High frequencies sparkle with clarity and precision, yet never becoming bright or harsh, offering an airy and refined top-end extension. Overall, the MM Pro presents music in a balanced, articulate and engaging way, making it easy to immerse yourself completely in your vinyl collection. The MM Pro has become my new reference phono stage for movie magnet cartridges, not just because of its really neutral tone and ultra low noise performance, but also because of those extra really handy features. The mono switch is invaluable. It improves the sound of every single mono record I have, particularly those older pressings, and it's a great alternative for those who don't want to invest in expensive mono specific equipment. The low frequency crossfeed, also very handy, particularly on headphones. It's much more subtle, but for those headphone listening sessions, you will notice a difference. There's also those XLR outputs, which I found, again, completely invaluable for when I've been doing my digital archiving of specific records that I want to create digital copies of. There's also the made in England factor. I love the fact that this is handmade by a small company in the UK. It's something that, obviously is a bit of a dying breed in terms of manufacturing within this country. And, he's certainly not resting on his laurels either. He's not just churning out these one by one, he's continuing to develop the product line. And there are already Mark II versions of this Phono Preamp and some of his other models in the pipeline. Speaking to Michael directly, it does sound like this may involve a move to some surface mount components, but only in a way that doesn't compromise performance or the longevity of the product. This is understandable, I think, for anyone who wishes to scale production. It just has to be done in the right way. That means that, if anything, hopefully the performance and the reliability of the product is improved. That said, if you are a purist, now is the time to grab an all-through hole version while you still can. I actually think Michael should offer, at a premium of course as the company grows, a custom shop edition, a bit like the Gibson custom shop, guitar wise, where you could custom order an all-through hole circuitry version made to order. I think this could really suit the business model really well. So Michael, if you're watching, you heard it here first. The current price for the MM Pro is $900 if you're in the US, or £660 if you're in the UK. For a hand-built Phono Preamp of this quality, I think that's an absolute steal. Let me know your thoughts about this review and this product down in the comments below. If you have any questions, I welcome those too. If you would like to support this channel further, I have the usual discount codes in the description of this video, where you get money off vinyl gear to feed your vinyl hobby. There's no extra cost to you. I get a very small commission and it helps to keep this channel running. There's also my Patreon page. Thank you to everyone who supports me there already. Again, link in the description for that. You can get bonus content, audio shootouts, lots of extra behind the scenes stuff as well. I appreciate everyone who supports me there already. And if you're new to this channel, please do consider subscribing. I'd love to have you on board my vinyl journey with you guys. But until that next video, keep enjoying the music, keep spinning the records, and I'll see you then. Cheers.